We interrupt our program with a special bulletin. An unidentified object has been spotted in orbit around the Earth.
Greetings, invaders. My name is Scott. This is Book Invasion. Thanks for watching. Today I have a tag video. This is the My Bookish First tag created by Monica over at Mooney Reads. This was an original tag she created like 7 years ago. She's reviving it now and tagging all of her cool sci-fi and fantasy buddies. Thanks for the tag, Monica. Let's get into the questions. Question number 1, what is the first full-length book that you remember reading on your own? Not picture books or anything. I would say maybe some of the Goosebumps books, if that counts as a full length, I guess. There was a book called The Indian in the Cupboard that I remember having. I don't know if it was for school. Maybe it was one that I picked just to read a chapter book for school. But I remember picking that one on my own, and I had that book for years. I liked it for some reason. I don't recall. There was a Dragonlance book I think I had read during high school. I think that I picked out on my own. I don't remember what it was called, but it was a really thick mass market paperback of a Dragonlance story. And then if we want to go for later in life, post high school or during senior year or something, there was Brain Droppings by George Carlin. That was a great book that we referenced a lot for jokes. And that gives you a sense of what my humor is like. George Carlin, Brain Droppings, Napalm and Silly Putty, his old classic books with all of his jokes and stories in it. I love George Carlin. He was amazing. Anyway, number 2, what is the first series you remember finishing? I think I put down the Old Man's War series. There are 6 books in all. So I read the first 3, and then it goes into like the Sagan Diaries, the Human Division, the End of All Things. I read those other 3. And I think that series is finished. So I read all of those in the Old Man's War series. That was probably the first series that I actually remember finishing. I did read part of the Ender's Game series. I read maybe 4 books out of the however many are there, but I never finished that. But that was the first one I remember finishing. Number 3, what is the first book-to-movie adaptation you remember watching, knowing it was a book-to-movie adaptation? I don't know. Like the first one was probably like James and the Giant Peach, maybe, or Peter Pan. Like those Disney movies that were based on old books. Huckleberry Finn or something like that, like those old school animated movies that were based on books. I would probably say that. Number 4, who was your first book crush? I don't know, first book crush. Let's go with like Sal the Cacophony from Seven Blades in Black. I don't have a good answer for that one. Number 5, who was your first bookish friend? My friend in real life. I would probably say Dennis from high school. He was a big fan of the Redwall series. I never read Redwall, but he always had a book of that in his hand, and he was, drawing and doodling the characters from it. He got me into the Dragonlance books, so that's when I picked up one of those. But that was like in high school, I think. He was always reading more than I was. We were playing video games and Magic and goofing around. But he always kind of had a library of books. And so I may have dabbled in a bit of reading, but he was the first kind of bookish friend that I had. So thanks, Dennis, for turning me on to some cool books. Number 6, what's the first adult book you remember reading not for school? Again, maybe the same as number 1, like Dragonlance, a George Carlin book. I think I remember picking up Ender's Game. I don't think that was for school. I remember getting that from the library. The other one I remember picking up was The Thief of Always by Clive Barker. I have a copy of it back here. But I remember picking that book up in the library. I just saw the cover art, and I was like, oh, this looks cool. And then the illustrations, like inside, were like, whoa, because Clive Barker's a freaking weirdo, in a good way. Number 7, who was your first character role model? I don't know, I guess Ender from Ender's Game. He was a cool underdog story where he kind of saved the world, and I thought that was kind of awesome. He was, I guess, a role model for me when I was a teenager. Number 8, who was the first author you were truly inspired by? I don't know. Truly inspired by, maybe seeing like that Clive Barker book comes to mind because those illustrations were just so vivid and it was so weird and creepy. I was like, ooh, this is good. Like that story still resonates with me a little bit. I don't know that inspired me to really do anything, but that was when it was like, oh, this is cool. And then we can go with, well, I won't say Orson Scott Card. He wasn't really an inspiration. He was just the first author that I actually read books by. We won't go into that. Maybe John Scalzi, I guess, because Old Man's War was just so awesome and funny and action-packed. That's kind of the story that I thought I would like to write. So we'll go with that. What is the first book you remember touching or moving you? I would say The Humans by Matt Haig. The Humans, at the end of that story where he goes and lists the advice for a human, that was like, these are the rules that people should be living by. And it makes you open up your eyes, gives you that other added empathy for people and places and things. That was really cool. What's the first classic you read not for school? None. Maybe like Hatchet by Paulson, if that's a classic. I remember reading. Oh, that was for school. Sorry, this was not for school. I don't know. The one I remember. I don't read classics. I never read like Grapes of Wrath or Huckleberry Finn or like those other classics or Catcher in the Rye. I never read any of those books. I still haven't. So we'll skip that one. Number 11, what's the first YA book you read? I don't know. I guess you can call it the first Hunger Games book. I remember reading that, and I thought that book was really awesome. It was a little bit more brutal and violent than the movie was. There were also some YA books that I had when I worked at a record store. We had a books section and a books table, and I picked up some from there. That was like, 12 years ago. So one of those was Be More Chill by Ned Vizzini, Hairstyles for the Damned by Joe Mino, and King Dork by Frank Portman. That book called to me. I was like, oh, King Dork. Awesome. Number 12, what is the first ebook you read? I think I had Name of the Wind was the first one I had on my Kindle. I looked at my Kindle library. Between that one and The Forever War by Joe Haldeman. I don't know which one I read first, but in my Kindle library, those are the first ones that I had. And then I think The Hunger Games. Those were the first ebooks that I read on my Kindle when I got it. I have an old Kindle Touch from, 20 years ago now, that I still use. But those are the first ebooks I read. I think that's all the questions, at least all the questions I printed out. Sorry if there are more. But that's my tag. That's my Bookish first tag. Thanks, Monica, for tagging me. So who should I tag? I don't know if Monica's already tagged these people because we're kind of in the same circle. Let's tag Ramsey over at Rogerthon, Kayla at Crack Into a Good Book. Let's tag those two channels. But thanks for watching, everybody. I will see you next time. Like and subscribe. See you later. Bye-bye.